Moreover, each had extraordinary identities and backgrounds. No one could be underestimated. So I impassively found a stool in a corner of the conference room and sat down. Of course, I wouldn't take the initiative to greet these 7 people either, maintaining a proper, unfamiliar distance from them, with the same keep-your-distance attitude and aura. Just as I was feeling that the atmosphere in the conference room was becoming somewhat dull and strange, a closed side door of the conference room opened. What made me feel extremely surprised and shocked was that the person walking in from the side door was my former mentor, Liu Yunfeng. At this moment, Liu Yunfeng had shackles on his hands and feet, like a heavily sentenced prisoner. Behind old Liu followed 2 men in glasses wearing white lab coats, looking like attending physicians in a hospital. The gaze behind their thin lenses appeared exceptionally cold. And at this time, old Liu, wearing handcuffs and leg irons, had a dull gaze and a numb expression. His whole person was bearded and sloppy, hair disheveled, as if he had just been pulled out of a garbage bag. Seeing old Liu in this state, my emotions momentarily spun out of control. I couldn't help but go up to old Liu and shout, "Old Liu, is that you? How did you end up like this?" But old Liu seemed not to recognize me, just stared at me with empty eyes for a moment, then dragged his heavy leg irons towards a stool and sat down. Old Liu's appearance once made the atmosphere in the conference room heavy. Everyone else's gaze also turned towards old Liu. At this moment, the bodyguard also quickly walked in from the side door. He whispered something to one of the white-coated doctors beside old Liu. The white-coated doctor whispered, "We just gave him a sedative. There shouldn't be any accidents." So the young man quickly walked out the side door again. I stepped forward and asked the white-coated doctor, "What exactly is going on? Why put old Liu in shackles? He is an expert receiving the state council's allowance. Why does he look like a beggar?" The white-coated doctor just gave me a cold glance and then said something I couldn't quite understand. "Perhaps he is no longer the old Liu you think he is. He has possibly transformed into a bloodthirsty wild man." "Transformed into a bloodthirsty wild man? What do you mean?" I asked, astonished. "Because when we performed an MRI on his brain, we found a chip implanted in his brain. Previously, he had lost control of himself and harmed dozens of innocent people. The cruelty was extremely tragic. If he didn't have a special status, he might have been shot and killed. During his capture, he was captured, and he resembles a wild man, and he had a chip implanted in him." "What chip?" "Before the chip is removed, we dare not draw any conclusions. But there is a chip in his brain. That much is certain. Perhaps it is precisely because of this chip affecting his brainwaves that he lost his sanity and underwent an unbelievable transformation." "Are you saying the chip is still in old Liu's brain?" "Yes. Since you know the chip is in his brain and affecting his brainwaves, why don't you perform surgery to remove it? With the current level of neurosurgery in the world, it's not yet possible to remove the chip from his brain, because this chip is implanted in the most sensitive part deep in his brain." Unless the doctor's unspoken words were clear. Moreover, this chip in his brain might be storing some kind of energy. The doctor added, "Storing some kind of energy? How should I understand that?" I asked. "Because whenever the patient is in an agitated state, the power that erupts from his body is completely beyond our control. And he was originally a frail old man. Such astonishing power erupting from such a body. There is simply no reasonable explanation for it. This is also why we put him in handcuffs and leg irons. So we also hope for your understanding. Hearing the doctor's words, I looked at old Liu speechlessly. My heart filled with mixed emotions. At this moment, the VIP, accompanied by his bodyguard, walked into the conference room from the side door after taking the main seat. He simply said, "Since everyone is here, let's begin." The lights in the conference room instantly went out. The people in the conference room were plunged into boundless darkness. In the silent, absolute darkness, I vaguely sensed a sound being transmitted. It was a sound produced by an extremely powerful low-frequency vibration. The sound seemed to approach from a distance, and as it arrived, the air around us seemed to start trembling. Only then did I realize that this conference room was equipped with a high-fidelity sound system, and this extremely powerful low-frequency sound was coming from this exact high-fidelity sound system. This immersive audio experience was like placing us in the midst of a volcano about to erupt, or an earthquake that had already begun. Finally, on the opposite wall, a blurry image began to appear. It was an image projected by a projector. This was footage filmed in an extremely dim environment. The camera was shaking violently. It was impossible to even see what kind of real scene the footage was capturing. But you could clearly hear the rapid breathing of the person filming and the chaotic sound of footsteps. Obviously, the scene in the footage was an extremely unusual one, and the person filming was indeed experiencing a real event similar to an earthquake. The person filming wanted to escape this unusual scene as quickly as possible. At this moment, the person filming was very nervous and scared. This could be clearly felt from the sound of their breathing. The violently shaking footage continued to play for a while. Finally, a person's voice was heard in the footage. Is he still behind us? I don't know, maybe. I feel like he's been following us the whole time. He never left. What do we do? The dialogue in the footage revealed deep fear and anxiety. What was behind them? They were in life-threatening trouble. Can you turn off the camera? A trembling voice said. Can't turn it off. I have to record this experience. What if we make it out? Another voice said. The speaker was using feigned optimism to boost their companions' morale. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream came from the footage, followed immediately by violent shaking of the camera. Then, a blinding white light appeared in the frame, and as the camera was dropped, it rolled, capturing extremely chaotic images. Finally, the fallen camera settled on one frame. Continuing to film a static shot, a crystal coffin appeared on the screen. The crystal coffin was placed on an altar, resembling a pyramid with its top cut off. Through the crystal coffin, I could clearly see inside it lay the body of a wild man with brownish red hair. Before I could get a clear look at the entire scene in the footage, a bloody face suddenly fell into view, completely blocking the camera's lens. On this bloody face, a pair of eyes, wide open in extreme terror, stared fixedly at us. I couldn't help but gasp. The projected video then ended. The lights in the conference room came back on. No one spoke. Everyone stared respectfully at the heavyweight. The VIP, looked around at us with a calm gaze. After we had composed ourselves, he said, "This footage was brought back from abroad by our security department through secret channels. This illustrates a problem. The information in this footage has already, given my oversight, been obtained by a foreign organization. And I can tell you clearly, the location where this footage was filmed is right here in Shennongjia. There is one more thing that is very likely related to this footage. One of our secret camps in Shennongjia has lost contact with us. What exactly happened to this secret camp? We have already dispatched local personnel to investigate. However, no news has been reported back yet. That is the situation. I now announce, your T-Series mission team is hereby reactivated. The public cover name is still the Fantastic Beasts Expedition Team. Your only mission this time in Shennongjia is to, before any other organization or agency, find this crystal coffin from the footage and bring it back completely intact. At this moment, I suddenly noticed old Liu, who was wearing handcuffs and leg irons. A glint of wisdom flashed in his eyes. Among everyone in the conference room, I was the only one familiar with and who understood old Liu, after I inadvertently caught that look in his eyes. I immediately confirmed that old Liu's mind and thoughts were normal and clear at this moment. So I asked old Liu, do you have something to say? Or is there some viewpoint you wish to express? My question caught the attention of everyone present. They all turned their gaze to me, and then to old Liu. At this moment, old Liu seemed completely oblivious to everyone present, including the VIP. He just stared intently at me. That sharp, intelligent glint had already vanished from his eyes, replaced by a melancholic look. Old Liu didn't answer me right away. He seemed to be trying hard to recall something. In the conference room, the people present also seemed to be waiting for old Liu to speak, all watching old Liu expectantly. After a good while, old Liu finally mumbled from his throat a few sentences that seemed rather incoherent. Walking into a trap, seeking your own death, must terminate. Your foolish actions must terminate. What you see lying in the crystal coffin is not a person. It is a god. Those who touch a god will be executed. When everyone present thought old Liu was in a state of delirium when he said these words, I, however, sensitively realized that this was not old Liu's voice at all. To be precise, the person speaking was not old Liu at all, but someone else. So I abruptly stood up and shouted sternly at old Liu, who are you? You are not old Liu at all. My earth-shattering question was like a clap of thunder exploding in the conference room. Shennongjia, sitting next to me, reacted the quickest. Throughout the entire process, Shennongjia had perhaps not relaxed his guard on old Liu for even a moment. At the same time, he hadn't missed the subtle change in my facial expression when my eyes met old Liu's. As soon as my words fell, Shennongjia, in an extremely decisive voice, commandingly shouted, protect the leader. Evacuate the monitoring area immediately. Lock down the monitoring area. As Shennongjia's commands were issued, old Liu's eyes also began to reveal a fierce, cold light. I was all too familiar with this cold light. Old Liu and I, in Shennongjia, had to close encounters with the wild man.